As you know that in the budget we had announced in June of this year that the accident compensation for workers actually will now fall under ACCF from the 1st of January. And we are glad to say that the specific laws obviously had been put in place and approved by Parliament. But further regulations had to be done to give substance to the law and give all the mechanics to the law for it to function properly. And as you also know that given the provisions that have been made through the budget and also the subsequent law that was approved by Parliament, employees now will no longer have to pay workers' compensation insurance for any death at work or for any injuries at work, because previously people had to get insurance from that. That will be compensated by way of 40% of the TPF levy or the FNU levy that all employees have to pay, the 1% of the gross salary that they pay. 1% of that, as you know, goes towards the TPF levy or the FNU levy. So from the what will happen from the 1st of Jan is that 40% of that TPF levy will go towards the funding of the compensation for workers. So it's a huge reduction of burden, in particular for small businesses who had to go out and take workers' compensation insurance. 40% of that now will go towards the ACCF compensation for workers insurance. Of course, as by law too also, for example, if a person gets injured at work and they may need to stay away from work for a period of time but will come back, in that period of time they will still need to be paid 2/3 of their salary. Now in that particular instance, of course, the employers will have to pay that. Some employers may choose to go and take out a separate insurance for that coverage, but of course most employers, what they do is simply fund that through their cash flow, through their normal account. So that's what's come into effect. And of course the CEO of ACCF is here with us and he'll give all the details as to how that's actually going to work and operate. The second element, of course, is now that will fall under the ACCF is schoolyard injuries. As you know, we have over 200,000 students in Fiji who are either primary school or secondary school or high school. We now, of course, have the early childhood education students too. So all of these students now will be covered under this particular schemes for any schoolyard injuries. We've had injuries, for example, I recall about 18 months ago there was a particular injury where a young man was accidentally stabbed with a pencil in the eye and the eye got damaged. We have those kind of injuries that do take place. So now, as also the CEO will tell you, that those injuries will be also covered now. And of course those injuries need to be reported to the Permanent Secretary for Education and of course to the ACCF. It will also give us the ability to do a particular stock take to see which schools are more prone to injuries, and then also to build safety measures and create awareness, in particular in those schools where there's a lot more injuries taking place. So it does cover a whole range of injuries within the schoolyard. And again, like we said, for the our objective of having this ACCF was to ensure, firstly, that all workers, all employees in Fiji are adequately covered. We find sometimes under the previous scheme or the current scheme, which will change from the 1st of Jan, a lot of the small businesses, for example, they don't have workers' compensation insurance or any cover. And when, for example, a worker that's working for them, an employer that's working for them, working for them, gets injured or dies, they don't have any ability to pay compensation. It becomes very drawn out. It becomes a very heart-wrenching experience, in particular for the families of the worker who's injured or the worker who's died on the job. So this will now solve the problem. It also now take away the issue of going to courts to gain compensation. As you know that we've done a similar thing with third-party insurance, and now you don't need the intervention necessarily of lawyers. You don't need the intervention of insurance companies. You don't have the unfortunate circumstances where you get courts adjourning matters or the lawyers asking for adjournments, and it drags on for the families and causes a lot of psychological and emotional stress and distress. So we're very glad to announce this, and we're also very glad that the ACCF CEO has done a lot of groundwork in that respect, and he'll also talk to you about the doctors and the number of doctors who will be certified essentially to do the assessments for the injuries. We are trying to ensure that we get a bigger pool of lawyers, pool of doctors, who can actually do the assessments for the injuries, so the workers don't have to wait for a long period of time, and in fact to build that level of capacity within the medical profession to do these assessments in a very professional and direct manner. So with those introductory remarks, I'll now like to pass over to the CEO of ACCF.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Welcome everyone. As the Minister has highlighted, from 1st of January, the Accident Compensation Commission's scope of work extends to include compensation for employment and school accidents. So just to be clear, both these areas will be operating under the broader Accident Compensation Act 2017. It's not a separate piece of legislation or a separate scheme that's being introduced. It is part of the Accident Compensation Act, and it's at the moment the core function of ACCF is to compensate for personal injuries and death arising out of motor vehicle accidents, and this expands the definition of accidents to include employment and school accidents. The compensation amounts are aligned with what already exists, and so you've got your maximums ranging from $75,000 to $150,000. So those amounts will be the same for employment accidents as well as school accidents. There's certain obligations, as the Honourable Minister's outlined. There are obligations such as the duty to report accidents to both the Permanent Secretary of Employment as well as ACCF. For injuries, the duty is to report within 14 days, and for death, it is 7 days. And as the Honourable Minister has outlined, the two-thirds obligation to pay the wages continues, and it's from our perspective, it's a huge burden that's been removed from businesses, and especially small to medium enterprises, from having to foot or face the possibility of having to pay out compensation. And as you all know, any award at that level, at the levels that are awarded, can literally shut down a small business. Just a single award in that respect. One question that comes up is whether employers have to pay a separate levy to ACCF, and the answer it's been answered, but just to reiterate that nothing additional has to be paid to anyone by employers. And if there is an accident or injury before 1st of January, then that will continue to be managed and handled the way it currently is under the Workmen's Compensation Act 1964. And that is a conversation with the worker, the employer, and if there's an insurance company, them, and as well as the workers' compensation team at the Ministry of Employment. As far as school accidents are concerned, we are pleased to hear the announcement that the scheme is now being extended to cover school accidents. And so basically, if there's any injury as a result of a school accident, and if it occurs on any school premises or during a school event or activity, so it is good that the scope is beyond just the school premises. It's a school premises or during a school event or activity. In that case, compensation will be paid out, and again, the amount is what is currently in the legislation for motor vehicle accidents as well. So those maximums still apply. And there is also reporting obligations for the controlling authority. The controlling authority of a school is what's determined, it's stated on the certificate of registration, so every school would know who their controlling authority is. They need to report any injury or death to ACCF as well as the Permanent Secretary, and then we will process any applications for compensation from there. So that's broadly where the scheme sits. It kicks in from 1st of January, and if there are any questions at all in terms of what form to fill, etc., we have an email address, info@accf.com.fj, or you can go to our website for our phone contact details as well.